This
Welcome.
conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to the very last Knowing Your Home workshop of our 2020 season. I hate to say it, but good riddance. I think we're all ready for this to be done. But we are ending on a very positive note. Thanks to Matt Clark for stepping in to do our window and door repair workshop. We're excited to have him here today, so thanks. And we are trying the format again like we did last week. So we have the camera, we'll get real close, up and personal, learn all the stuff that we need to about windows and door repair. And as Ian mentioned, please feel free to ask questions along the way, put that into the thought bubble. He will shout them at us and then we'll try to get the answers for you. So again, thanks for joining us tonight. And I think we're gonna hop into windows.
We are. But first, most importantly, before we start talking about doing any work, especially when working with older windows or anything that's been painted around a long time, you need to wear the proper safety gear when you're working on them. Key respirators, a good respirator is good is key, as well as my glasses, but a good pair of safety glasses. As well as whenever you're working with glass, especially old glass, because a lot of these windows, especially the older ones like this, it's plate glass, so it's not safety glass. It won't shatter in a million pieces. It'll come down like a guillotine in big sections, and it's very, very sharp. So wearing a good pair of gloves is also important.
So can we talk a little bit about lead just for a moment? So we have here, obviously you'll see this window, we'll get a little bit closer, and you can see the alligatoring that's happening on the window itself here and all along the lines. Those are key signs of lead-based paint. So you want to just make sure you're taking all precautions when you're dealing with a window or a door. This is the good side, but if you can see the bad side here, all the alligatoring, this actually came out of my house. And you can see all the different layers here of paint, lead-based paint here. So we want you to make sure you're operating in a lead-safe manner. And again, wearing those respirators, wearing the gloves, making sure that your children are not in the area that you're working, making sure that you're not doing your laundry with the kids' laundry. So just take some safety precautions. We will make sure you get a link to the Renovate Right, which is from the National Health EPA, as well as how to keep our families safe from lead in our homes. You want to make sure that you follow all those things. So we just want to get our PSA out there. Please practice lead-safe practices.
All right. One thing we're very, very passionate about is, aside from safety, is maintaining the wood windows, the historic quality and appeal of the wood windows that a lot of us in Lakewood or in older homes in general have in our house. They're really easy to maintain. They're built out of wood to last forever. And I mean, my house is 114 years old, and it has all the original windows. And there's tricks and little methods that you'll learn today that'll help you make those windows a little more weatherproof, and so you can cut down on your drafts. But yeah, rather than replacement windows or using replacement windows, keeping the historic and good-looking wood windows is one of our passions as well. So first off, we're going to go and talk about the different parts of a window. There's a bunch of different parts to a window like this. Ian, if you could bring up the slide that's anatomy of a window, please. So basically, there we go. So while we're waiting for Ian, there's a bunch of different names for a bunch of different parts. So, and if you don't know the exact term, it's always, technology allows us, if you have to go to the hardware store and you're looking for something, take a picture, point to it on your phone, and ask one of the helpers at the hardware store to what that part is, or if they have a replacement part.
Or you can visit the website that's on your
or follow
PDF.
the link that's on the screen there, and that'll get you to the window glossary as well. So if we're starting from the bottom here,
Oh my God, my hair.
starting from the bottom, you have your sill. You're basically your sill. It's the bottom of the window. Working your way up, you have your tops and bottoms are your rails, where the windows, the inner sash is the inside window, the outer sash is the outside window. Where those two meet, that's called a meeting rail. The muttons are the pieces of wood that frame into the interior of the window. We also have your stiles, which are your sides here of the window frame themselves. Your sash cords and your weights, which allow the windows to move safely up and down. Also, you have your interior stops right here, which most of ours are nailed. And your homes have little tiny screws in them. But those, when you're working on changing out some glass or trying to repair sash cord, which we'll show you how to do today, it's really easy just to gently take the stops out, and you can remove the window itself. So just like that. So when you're doing maintenance, I guess that's the next thing we want to talk about is maintenance on the window.
Now, I do want to point out that we would imagine this window to have 70 layers of paint, more than
Correct,
likely.
yeah. So if you, with the paint on the window, we have a couple tools here that we would use to, say it's, you just painted your window in the fall and you haven't opened it since then, and you want to open it obviously for the spring and summer. A tool like this, it's called a zipper, is really easy. It has a nice serrated edge there on both sides, and you basically can use it to go down the lines where the outer or the inner sash meets the window and basically cut the paint. Utility knife is also great for doing that. And then your windows will slide freely. Another trick is just a tiny little bit of WD-40 in there. Just not too much, but that'll help the windows slide easily too. One thing that everybody's also doing as far as maintenance at this time of year is weather stripping. So just to seal up your windows for the winter, there's a couple different types of weather stripping that you can do. Let me pull my notes up here.
So Ian, could you please bring up the slide that says bronze weather stripping?
But it's an easy thing to install, and it can save you a lot on drafts and your heating in the winter, keep you warmer.
So with the bronze weather stripping, if you already have it on your windows and it's there, so if Matt could point to the top of the sash, it would be up there, which would help get a nice fit when you open and close your window, or down the sides, and sometimes at the bottom. He's like my Vanna White, thank you. That really helps it get a nice fit. That bronze weather stripping was put in when the windows were built, so anywhere from 80 to 120 years ago. So if you want to keep with that historic nature, you can buy it. Lakewood Hardware has it or can order it for you if they don't have it in stock. But then there's also other kinds, right?
Yeah, there's vinyl weather stripping too that has it's adhesive on the back. You just peel off the cover and you can basically stick it inside the top of the bottom sash and the sides as well to keep those properly sealed and eliminate any drafts that are coming in. Another way to winterize, and it's probably the simplest way to do it, is like 3M makes a product that's plastic sheeting that you use double-sided tape, and you tape it basically to the frame of the window on the outside, and then you use a hair dryer to make it shrink and tight. And doing it it's an easy thing to do, and it can save a lot of money on your heating bills. But yeah, doing it properly and drying it with a hair dryer, heat gun properly, you won't even be able to see it there because it's clear. that works really well.
Matt, we probably didn't get a chance to talk about it, but we do have another product on the table called Zip Away. It's in the tube. I think it's Seal and Peel, or it's got another name. But that is something that I use in my house here because I have a door that will not close properly. I try and I try and I try. You can get this at Lakewood Hardware, but it will not stay closed. And so I put a line of the Seal and Peel around the door, and I just leave it there all winter long. So if you have a pesky window or a pesky door that you can't get to close, or it's got a real big draft, this Zip Away is a really great product because it's not permanent. It's easy, removable weather stripping that you can use on windows or doors.
And well, I mean, using caulk and checking for any gaps on the outside or inside of your windows that could be refilled with painter's caulk is also another thing that goes with maintenance. And always be sure if there's any old caulk or glazing or wood putty or anything else when you're dealing with maintaining your windows, that you clean all that off first and so you're starting, when you apply your new caulk, new glazing, new weather stripping, you want to make sure that all the old stuff is gone completely so that the new stuff will adhere and do what it's supposed to do, what it's designed to do.
So where would a good place to use caulk on a window, where would that be?
Mainly on the exterior, I guess.
So if we were on the outside here.
So it would be, in here and in there, along the sides of the stiles, on your exterior, basically where you don't want to use it where the window will be moving, because that's ineffective. So, and it's always good to, if you feel like the first cold day, if you feel drafts, finding where those are coming from and investigating the location of the draft will help you determine where you need to apply any number of the suggestions that we've made as far as weatherproofing your window and sealing it up tight for the winter.
So caulk and that vinyl cling wrap, for lack of a better term, is a cost-effective way for us to save money on our heating bills.
A tube of caulk is cheap and it's easy to use, as well as the plastic wrap, the 3M weatherproofing that you can put on the interior of your house, of your windows. It's a really, really easy way to save money and keep your house warm in the winter.
So this is, I think, another plug that insulation is really key to keeping our homes warm.
Yep.
Windows, they help, and we'll talk about storm windows a little later, but I think I get a lot of clients calling and saying, my windows are terrible and drafty and my house is so cold, I need new windows. I say, do you have insulation? And they say, well, no, but I want new windows. So they get the new windows, and then they call me the next winter and tell me my house is cold and drafty. So then they get the insulation. So you hear it here, folks, first. Insulation works. Make sure you take all those extra steps with your windows, though, to help get extra bang for your buck.
Correct.
Hey, Ian, do we have any additional questions about weatherizing our windows
or
anatomy?
No questions so far.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So, repair and reglazing and all the stuff you would need to do if you have a cracked window, or in this case, with this one right here, it's got a crack up here, as well as the side stile is split, as you can see. So doing repairs like that, in this case where it's heavily damaged, then you would want to replace the whole stile. Or if you get lucky, there's plenty of old windows out there on Craigslist. If you get lucky, you can get one. You can just buy an old window and pull your lower sash out and just be able to replace it with one that's in good condition. But if you're going to repair something like this, a large split like that would need to be milled or remilled, and Cleveland Lumber can do that for you. But something more simple, like where this piece of glass is missing on this window, is an easy fix. First off, what you want to do, you're going to take one of these tools, like we're using today. This is a 5-in-1 scraper. There's just a regular putty knife, but we pop the broken glass out. So as you can see, all this glazing around these other ones is coming out here. So I was cleaned off all or most of the old glazing. Okay, and then you have these little glazing points that were in there. So those can just pop out, and they look like this, and they come out. So you want to pop those out because you're going to need to get the glass in, and those will be getting in the way. So then after you get the glazing points out and all the old glazing cleaned up, I mean, a lot of times it'll fall off. You can see there's somebody, whoever had this window, caulked the outside of the glass around that where it might have cracked or was coming loose, instead of reglazing it on the inside, which creates pressure against the outside mutton, which is just wood and holds the window in place. So get it all cleaned up, and then take your measurements and go up to Lakewood Hardware, and they will cut the custom piece of glass for you. In doing so, rather than replacing the whole window, you can replace one piece of glass. Same for a full big piece like this. You remove all the glazing, and again, wear your mask, wear your safety glasses, wear your gloves, and you pull that out. You can see actually on this one, not to change the subject, but right there, that piece of metal is the bronze weather stripping we were talking about before. So this would be the outside or the inside of the bottom sash.
Right, where they would meet. They have a cute name for that.
This meeting rail.
The meeting rail.
So there we go. So you pull this whole piece out, or pull it in pieces like this. Again, this is plate glass, so be careful when you're pulling it out, because it'll crack very easily. So wear gloves, keep a trash can nearby or a shop vac so you can clean up any messes or any glass pieces that get on the floor. But so we pulled out our glass, we pulled out our glazing points, we got our new piece of glass ordered. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna use glazing compound and replace the piece of broken glass.
So Ian, while we're getting that glazing compound open, I think we have a question.
We do. So, got a question. What type of caulk on the exterior is the best?
You want to, I mean, it's basically, if you're looking like this, this is, you're gonna, when you look at the label for this is DAP as a brand, but if you go to a hardware store or Cleveland Lumber, you want to find they make it in multiple colors. So whatever the color of your paint is where you're caulking, you want to match that. This is white, but it will list out, it's for windows, doors, siding, and trim, or it's, but it will also say exterior grade. So you want to make sure when you apply it too, that you follow the directions on the back as far as temperature goes, and how it would be affected if it rained, within 20 minutes of you applying it. Some of it dries in 30 minutes, and you can even paint it in an hour. I mean, the stuff they make is pretty good. But yeah, read the labels on whatever you buy: glazing, caulk, weather stripping, because they're there for a reason, and they'll give you the best notes. But yeah, anything that's exterior grade, And made for, I mean, it says made for ceiling windows on it, on the label. That's what you would want to get.
And then if you do plan on painting it, just make sure that it's able to be painted.
Right. There's certain types of silicone-based caulk that you can't paint. It creates like a rubber seal, and a lot of those are used in kitchens and bathrooms and interior. But read your label too, because if you tried to paint it, the paint won't penetrate the silicone, and you'll be left with a little bit of a mess. It will look like you just wiped oil on whatever you're painting. So yeah, be sure to read the label that it can be painted if you're going to use it to paint.
Great, thank
Good
you.
to go. Thank you.
So for glazing, it's just like, I mean, basically it's like playing with Play-Doh. You want to get a little bit in your hand, and you want to roll it. I mean, they also make a caulk version that I've used before that works really well. But for something like this, where it has a regular shape, I prefer to be able to manage the glazing a little easier by using a smaller amount, not a caulk gun. So basically, you want to roll it into a thin strip. If you look on the bottom of this window, you can see where somebody didn't pull all the old glazing out. They just pulled the damaged parts out, and it actually creates a place where it can easily chip away. So that's why it's important. See, that's a new glazing, and then over here is the old glazing. So it must have cracked here, and they just tried to shove it in there. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure you have a clean, smooth surface for putting the new batch of glazing in. So this little section right here, I have cleaned out completely.
Now, just to kind of clarify here, so the way that the window is set up, it's like you could glaze it in place, but then you can also take the sash out and lay it down and glaze it on the
Yeah,
flat.
you can glaze it on laying flat if you wanted to. So we clean out the little mutton here, and just pretend there's a fresh, shiny piece of glass in there. You get the glass in, and then you want to take your glazing point. And you're basically, it's recessed, so it's going to go into the mutton with enough space to let the glass in. So once the glass is in, you're going to put in your glazing point.
Can you normally just push it in, or do you need
No,
to?
you would need to hammer it in. But gently hammer it in, because you're dealing with a piece of glass. So get your glazing points in, and usually on something like this, I mean, you can see there's 1, 2 here in the middle. You can feel there's 1, 2 in the top. So every like 3 or 4 inches, there's a glazing point. So on this bigger one, there's 1 right there. There's 1 right there. So yeah, I mean 1, 2, 3. There's 4, 5 in that one. So just make sure they're in there tight so your window glass can't move. And just work your glazing up until it's probably you want it to be about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inches high, and make sure it's all malleable. And then basically you're going to put it in up against the glass. And form it with your fingers. It's a little hard to do without the glass, but so we'll move over here. So that's the edge. I put it on a dirty window, and it's not sticking. So this amount of glazing is sort of shot right now. So I'll go back to my other piece. We make sure it's all clean. And then we're just gonna gently push it on there and form it. You can get a knife or glazing tool that will actually help you form it into a more even shape, but I prefer just to take my time and do it by hand. So, and you want to do it evenly all the way down, but let it set up a little bit. It's one of those things that after you touch it, you just want to walk away from it and let it harden up overnight, and that and the glazing points keeps the glass in place.
So if we're using our putty knife or our glazing knife, we would get a nice smooth edge.
You could, yeah, I mean, you could use a putty knife or a glazing knife. You can smooth that out. Sometimes it's easier to do after it sets up a little bit, so it hardens. But yeah, you just want to smooth that out.
And Matt is doing it like he's done it 1,000 times. If I was doing this, I would have it laying down on the table and bracing it and doing it very, very, very gently. But you can tell Matt's done it a lot of times. So don't feel bad if you need to lay your window down on the table.
Really, too, it's a lot of this stuff is trial and error. So start small. Like start with a little piece of glazing and work it in your hands and get the feel of it. Because you do it by the time you're done with the whole window, then you'll be a pro at glazing. And that's another recommendation. If obviously you have to take it all out, so replace all the glazing. Don't patch. If you're going to replace, or if you have a bit of cracked glazing on any window, you want to remove all the glazing and start with a new piece, a new material, and do the whole window, not just a little spot, because anywhere where there's two different materials going up against each other, old and new, there's going to be the potential for water or something to get in there. And even with glazing doesn't really expand and contract with temperature, but if water gets in a small crack, water expands. Obviously, ice, it will get cold and it'll push the glazing and crack it between the old and new material. So.
Could we use this time maybe to talk a little bit about hardware on the window?
Yeah. So obviously, everybody, the most obvious hardware is the lock between the lower sash and the upper sash. I mean, those should always be. I mean, they're really easy to maintain. This one, obviously, like a lot of our window hardware in our homes, is painted. So the best thing to do when you're painting your windows, if you're painting or repainting your windows, is to remove the hardware first. So it's real simple. 2 screws. Just pull those out, set it aside, paint it, and when the paint's dry, put the locks back on, and also your poles, which I don't know if I have any in here, but yeah, the poles on the bottom, just take those off. It's good to, I mean, when you take those off, what I like to do when I do cabinets or windows, any of the hardware, I like to soak in a lubricant for just 15 minutes just to make sure everything penetrates all the moving parts.
So would that be like a WD-40?
WD-40, yeah, or anything any commercial lubricant or spray lubricant is fine. You just put it in a small Tupperware and put all your hardware in the Tupperware and just spray it and let it soak in the Tupperware. You don't have to submerge them, just give everything a good spray, and that'll make sure they're functioning, because a lot of times the window locks will lock up on you, and when you try to open them in the spring to move your storms and let the air in, you can't get them open. So a trick for that is just to hit them with some WD-40 when they're in place. Also, if you do have a window that's stuck and you can't open the lock, a lot of times the upper sash might have loosened or came down, or if a sash cord broke, during the winter or over time, the upper sash might have sunk a little bit. So always check that it's secured and it's up as high as it can go. That a lot of times that simple trick will enable you to release the pressure that's on the lower sash window lock, and you'll be able to turn it.
And so there's nothing wrong with just giving up, though, right, and buying new hardware that matches your windows.
Yeah.
Lakewood Hardware does carry it. Western Window Service also can help you replace your hardware. So it's okay if yours has 10,000 coats of paints and you just want to throw your hands up and move on.
Right.
We all have 100 other things we can do. So obviously, there are a lot of local places that can help you with that. Now, what happens if I have a window that takes 3 people to open and close? So probably the sash cord or something has busted or...
Yeah, a lot of times, I mean, for like in this window, you have 4 weights, 2 on each side, and 4 sash cords, 1 for the inner sash, 2 for the inner sash, and 2 for the outer sash, or lower and upper. Basically, the way a window works is the sash cord is locked in. I don't know if you can see this. By a knot. Whoop. Hey
Oh
there.
dear. Oh dear.
Be very careful when you're doing this as well. It's good to have 2 or 3 people to help you. But there's a knot down here, and that's all pressure fit in there. It's just the weight keeps it tight. The sash cord itself runs up along the side of the window and into a pulley, which isn't going anywhere, which basically looks like this. That's the wheel, or the housing for the pulley, and that's the wheel, and that just sits in there like that, and the sash cord runs up and back down inside the window to the sash weight.
Now, I can't just replace that sash cord with clothesline.
No, they make a special rope, sash cord rope, or sash chain.
And Ian, if you could pull up the PowerPoint, please. We have a picture of the chain. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the difference between the cord and the chain.
Correct, yes. They're both effective, but the chain obviously is steel. It'll last longer than the cord. The cord over time the cord will stretch and dry and could eventually break. I'm sure. Every set of windows in my house, I'm sure at least one sash cord has broken over the 6-7 years I've been in my house. But yeah, the only problem with the chain is it doesn't run as smooth as the cord. So, and the cord's really, really easy to change out. You don't have to worry about cutting the chain or anything like that. So, again, normally you have your interior casing on the inside of your house. So what you're gonna do to change your sash cord is you want to pull the interior casing off, or any trim work that's on the outside, and then you pull your interior stops off like we did with this one. If one of these breaks, they sell this general layout molding style of an interior stop at most hardware stores or lumber yards. So you pull that out like we did before. You want to pull your window out and unhook the sash cord from the window. If the weight's broken in there, or a lot of times it'll jump off the pulley, you put it back on the pulley obviously, and make sure that the weight is tied up tight. But use your take a tape measure and measure out the length of the sash cord. When the window's up, the weight should be pretty much almost touching the bottom of the inside of your casing. So cut your sash cord, place it in here, or make a knot on the end, just a simple knot on the end, and you put it in the sash cord hole, run it up the rail. You can see on this one actually is pretty.
Oh, yes.
So there's where the sash cord goes in, and I can show you real quick with this piece that we have here. Just making a simple knot. And there also, I mean, there's different size sash cords. This is a 3/8. The one on that is for a heavier window. So the larger the window, the heavier the sash cord, but it just slips right in there. You want to just pull it tight. You run the other end of the cord up through the pulley. And like I said, measure it down so that when the window is all the way up, the weight will be almost touching the inside of the interior casement. Tie off your weight and then put everything back together. Put your casement back on, put your stops back in, and put your window back in. We did a Knowing Your Home, and we did a toolbox video a couple months ago that shows in depth how to do that. If you go on LakewoodAlive's website, you can look that up as well.
So if you are missing a weight, Lakewood Hardware does have some reclaimed weights that you can use. And if your window doesn't go up and down, a good reason for that is probably because the weights have been removed and there's nothing to help pull the window up. Or maybe the weights are in there. If you were to pull off your molding around your window.
You can see they're sitting in the bottom because the sash cord broke at one time.
Right. So that would be the first place to start. Now, this might be a good time for us to flip and talk about the sash and jam liners, in case we want to flip our windows, make them a little more modern, or solve a couple problems. Ian, if you don't mind bringing up the PowerPoint for the sash jam liner slide. And so this is a nice opportunity for people who maybe are concerned about lead safety for their children. If your windows are grinding or rubbing when you're opening and closing them, if they're very difficult, this will add a nice smooth surface. It is made out of aluminum or plastic. You can buy them at Lakewood Hardware. You'll measure from the top of your window to the very bottom where the sill is, and then they'll order them for you. And it basically then provides a smooth surface for the window sash to go up and down on. Or if you want to modernize your window, it also will make it become a pop-out window. Just pop out so you can clean it from the inside if you want to. And then it also removes the need for weights. It is spring-loaded. So you just put it on the side, Vanna, if you don't mind pointing to where they would go. Oh, thank you. So you would install it right over there on both sides, and then your window will just go up and down. So it really solves many, many purposes. But instead of, peeling off the molding that has 20 coats of paint, or worrying about how you're going to tie your sash cord on your weights, it solves some problems. So we encourage you to think about the sash or jam liners that you can use in your windows.
Yeah, they're really easy to use, really easy to install, and they will replace the weights that if you open it up and you don't see any weights. I mean, you can look at your windows, and if they're missing the sash cords, then either the weights were taken out or the sash cords broke and the weights are in the windows. I would, if I'm a betting man, I would bet that the weights are still in the windows, because a lot of times the sash cord breaks and it just goes flying into the window, into the cavity next to the window, and then your window will still move up and down, but that's when you have that the capacity it'll slam down on you or on your fingers or something like that if the weights aren't in there to slow the speed down of opening and closing.
And if you do convert them with the liners, you can then insulate the cavity where the weight would normally go, which would then...
You can use Great Stuff makes it's a foam spray that's not expanding. Make sure you would have to use the non-expanding foam, because if you use the regular stuff that you use to fill cracks and gaps in other areas of your house, it'll expand so much that you will actually pinch your window and it won't open. So I think it's a blue can of Great Stuff foam that you can fill with that, or you can also get fiberglass insulation, and you can cut it into strips with a utility knife and put it in the cavity there where your weights were. Don't use insulation if you're still using your window weights, because that'll prevent your weights from moving up and down.
Yeah, I have terrible vinyl replacement windows that smile at me. I kind of wish I had leaky old wooden windows, and they did not insulate the cavities behind the windows. I feel huge breeze behind them.
Yeah, I mean, if you have vinyl windows in your house, one good project to do in the spring or when it starts to warm up, well, pay attention to where it's coming in the winter. Obviously, if you're feeling drafts around your window like that, then most likely no insulation was put in when the windows were installed. So you can just get, you can get strips of regular fiberglass insulation or a can of the non-expanding grade stuff, pull the interior casement or trim off, and you'll see there's always a gap. And on the vinyl ones, it might be like half an inch. So what you could do is you could rip or cut strips of fiberglass and then take a 5-in-1 tool or putty knife, and you take the strips and you shove them in there. You don't want to pack it super tight with fiberglass insulation because it's sort of meant to have a little bit of airflow to make it work properly. Or you can use the foam and just spray it in there as well. Let that foam dry overnight until it hardens, and then you can take a utility knife and you cut the excess foam off before you put your casing or your trim back on.
Great, great.
I think we have another question.
Nope, no questions on this end.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we might be moving on to storm windows.
Yeah, we can do storm windows. This time of year, I'm sure everybody has either put them down already or in the older windows, or hung them outside, because some of our houses have storm windows that are exterior. They hang from little clips on the outside, and oftentimes have little levers that lock them into place on the inside. Keeping those glazed, those older wooden ones glazed and properly painted and making sure they're in good condition, because a lot of times the thin wood on those, after years of seeing weather, it'll start rotting and cracking. And if you stay on top of it and use a product like this interior exterior latex wood patch, you can fill in small cracks and gaps that normally water could get into and expand and end up pushing, pulling your storm windows or even your sashes out. Like right here, there's a crack that just started between the bottom rail and the stile. So that is something that you can fill with wood putty, or that would be something you could use caulk, painter's caulk to fill as well. But that's when it starts to go like that, that's when you want to take care of it so that you don't end up, it doesn't end up splitting or rotting more.
Now, Matt, if we have a rotted corner or maybe just something that maybe water had been getting into, is wood hardener a good option?
A wood hardener?
So the liquid wood
Yeah,
hardener?
I mean, you could use that, the wood hardener for that, because it's waterproof. Anything that's latex, even like this wood patch, or an exterior grade putty. I mean, the stuff they make nowadays is basically, it sets so quickly and it's so strong and it's waterproof and paintable or sandable or stainable, that you filling any of those corners or cracks that could potentially let water find a way in is a good way to maintain and keep your wooden windows living for as long as they possibly can.
And
Hey, Matt, sorry to interrupt. Just have a question. How would you replace old wood storm windows?
A lot of times the old wooden ones that hang on the outside of the house. I just helped a friend actually who had a piece of glass break in one, and it's almost good that the glass broke, because when we took it off, the whole frame basically fell apart. We were able to mill new pieces and put it back together. But if you're looking to replace them, I would look online, see if you can find some. Cleveland Lumber will make them as well.
And Lakewood Hardware.
And Lakewood Hardware as well. So there's definitely a lot of options. Yeah, I mean, call Lakewood Hardware, call Cleveland Lumber, call your local lumber yard and see what their milling capabilities are for making those wooden storm windows. If you're replacing a piece of glass only, then you just use the techniques we taught you earlier with the glazing and the glazing points, because they're basically built the same way as your regular window.
Now, I have a lot of clients who are starting to get a little older, can't get up on a ladder to put those big old storm windows on. I believe that interior storm windows are an option that slide in.
Yeah, I mean, you could, a lot of people have replaced, I mean, if you look at the outside of your house, you can actually see probably brackets above your window that are great now for hanging Christmas lights. But I mean, changing out all your exterior storm windows it can get harder as you get older. And I mean, not all of us have a, 30 or 40 foot extension ladder to get the upper windows to changed out. So yeah, they do make interior. They're spring loaded and they slide into your window frame, and that'll double as a storm window so that you don't have to go outside and climb a ladder and pull your wooden ones off. The other storm windows that most of us have as well they're spring loaded just like a screen, and they slide up and down. Obviously, for the summer you slide it up and then you slide it back down in the winter, basically switching the location of the screen and the storm window. One really important thing to do and to pay attention with those is once a year when you before you go to move them, before you change them out for the screen or change them back for the winter, make sure that the tracks that they're running on are clean and clear of debris. You can use a wire brush or a rag and just and clean it off. Also, a lubricant like WD-40 that works as well. Keep that, just you don't have to go crazy. Just give it a little squirt and then work it up and down, and make sure that the rails get all lubricated properly. But yeah, it's good to set up small little maintenance steps like that when you're changing out your screen or your storms so that you do it, it's basically once every 6 months or once every 3 or 4 months, is when the weather changes. But yeah, so lubrication and even where the springs are on the bottom, make sure you lubricate those as well to keep them freed up.
I have those storm windows, as you know, and they are a pain in the behind, and I have not lubricated them, so I will be doing that because they make this horrible scratching noise that makes me want to stab myself in the eye.
Yeah, and it can become a potential hazard too, is because if you're trying to move them up and down and they haven't been lubricated properly, they can. It's just an aluminum frame and a piece of glass, so that frame can shift. And I know when I first moved into my house, I was pushing up the storm windows, and one of those storm windows in the bedroom, it shifted so much that the glass just popped out. So, and that glass is, if it's an older storm window, it is not safety glass. It's plate glass, and it will come apart in large chunks. So just be careful when you're doing it, and maintaining them will say just a simple thing like spraying them down with a lubricant will keep you safe, and it'll be less of a headache when you go to move them down in the spring and the fall.
Great. And then weep holes. If we didn't talk about those.
Weep holes are important. They're in the sill of the window, and they basically keep water from collecting in the windowsill. So a lot of times when people paint their windows, they paint the sill as well, and they can seal off those weep holes so that you will have a little bit of a puddling, which will in turn damage your sill, and it can actually leak inside the house and down inside the walls, creating a potential for mold. So you want to make sure that those are cleaned out. A great way to do that is vacuum your windowsills. It doesn't take much to keep those clean and clear. But if you do notice something pulling up in the bottom of your windowsill, basically right here, behind your lower sash.
So it'll be on the exterior.
Yeah, it'll be on the exterior. Then you have clogged weep holes. So,
nobody wants a clogged weep hole.
Nope. So yeah, the weep holes are something you should keep clean too. A lot of times, if you do see a window that's been, yes, Ian.
Just have a question. Sorry, I thought you were done with your thought. My apologies. The question is, are spring-loaded storms as effective as those you install on the exterior?
They both basically serve their purpose. The spring-loaded ones that you slide up and down, those, I mean, they both do the same thing. They keep weather out. So whether you have a big storm you hang on the outside that's covering your whole exterior of the window, or you have the sliding storm. I mean, the sliding storm is in a track that seals it, and it's got a rubber gasket around it that also keeps it in place. So yeah, I think they're both as effective. The only difference I would say would be when you go to change them out, climbing a ladder to get the exterior hanging storms off is more difficult than just sliding one up on the inside.
And then if we were to talk about the spring-loaded interior storms, do we think that they're about the same as
I would say,
outside?
yeah. I mean, obviously the old storms, the exterior old storms they're beautiful. They give the house character. They're historic. They have that appeal, and they're effective. So if they're not damaged, and you can easily change them out, and you have a place to stick them all for the summer, then I would try to maintain those as best as you can. I mean, we always like to promote keeping our houses, historically accurate and, looking like they did 100 years ago. They're beautiful. So I would recommend keeping those if they're functioning properly, they're not a hazard, and they're safe, and you can safely remove them. But then, technology, we're able to make amazing things too. So the spring-loaded interior storms and the sliding storms, they're all very effective.
Great. Ian, any more questions before we move on to doors?
Not right now. I did have a question from Vicky, but I just asked her for some clarification. So Vicky, if you would get back to me, and then we'll ask it once we have a pause. Go right ahead, Matt.
Okay, so moving on to doors. If you could pull up, Ian, please, the anatomy of a door slide. And we can
You're good to
move
go. It's on the screen. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. We can move over to this. For the record, Allison and I are maintaining our 6 feet
Yeah, we're trying.
distance. But so basically, this is a closet type door out of Allison's house. It's an old one. It's an old solid wood door. Um, the door, like the window anatomy, has a gazillion different names, pieces, parts, blah blah blah. So again, easiest thing to do for clarity is, take a photo, even print it out, write on it, this is what I need to know, and take it to the hardware store and say, Glenn, what is this part of the door? And he'll say, oh, that's a top rail or a freeze rail or the middle rail, or that's molding, or that's a mullion.
And
So-
Ian, can you pull up the other slide? It's going to be really tiny, and I apologize, but the one right below it has a bunch of different styles of door.
doors.
And the link is on the slide at the bottom. Just so that you have for someone to check out, but there's a whole bunch of different kinds of doors on there. So if you wanted to either investigate a certain type of door, or if you wanted to be able to speak specifically about your door, make sure that you check out that link.
And it's also good if you have a door, the way our older houses were designed as far as doors go is a lot of, homes that were built in the early 1900s, because of heat, you have, 20 doors and you're in 15 rooms and you're in the first floor of your house. So a lot of those doors, though, over the years, as technology got better and heating systems got better and insulation got better, people pulled them off. I'm sure a lot of people who bought a house in Lakewood went in the basement when they first bought the house and saw a stack of 6, 7 doors. But yeah, so these doors are great. They have a lot of great character. They're built to last. I like having, I didn't put all my doors back on, but I I hung a couple, just to separate rooms, and, it's also great for closing the doors and letting the room just go and not trip you up when you're in the kitchen when you thought it was in the living room.
I hate that.
But yeah, so like this door is a panel door, and their characteristics are the number of panels basically. So this one has 5 panels on it. These are the panels right here, 5. As far as the other parts of the door, I mean, you have your rails, your top rail, your interior ones are called freeze rails. Your bottom rail, obviously, down here. The molding is the part that's around each of these. See, the mullion is when you have a side-by-side panel door that has a panel running vertically. The interior piece is called a molding and not a middle rail. Or a mullion, sorry, not a middle rail. So on the outside of the door, much like a window, you have your stops, which are similar to these window stops that will go on the frame of the door and basically stop it from stop it from opening 180 degrees. You also have your jamb, which is the framing around the door, and then obviously your lock, your door handles. This is an old lock set on here, but it's a simple. They call it a dead man lock because you just open it. It doesn't actually lock. It just turns to keep the door closed. Variety of different knobs. A lot of these are some old ones that I found at a garage sale actually. But it's great to keep a lot of these parts because a lot of time the knob stem, which is this threaded piece right there, will get stripped, and that's when you pull your door knob and the whole thing comes out. So there's little, you can see in here, there's a little screw, the set screw, and that basically, when it's loose, it allows you to put the knob on the knob stem, and then you tighten that screw up, and that'll keep the knob from coming off. So if you have in your house, if you walk around and you have loose knobs, check the little set screw, again, it's right there, in the knob, and you just take a flathead screwdriver and you make sure that the knob's seated properly all the way on the knob stem, and then you tighten up that little screw with the screwdriver, and it stays on there, and no more annoying loose doorknobs. As far as the lock system goes, I think we have a slide of that, don't we?
We do, yes. Ian, if you wouldn't mind pulling that up, please. I think it's on the other side there.
So, my first recommendation on, especially if you have an older door lock, is call Cuyahoga Lock and Key if you need it serviced, or you need it rekeyed. They've been doing it for years, and they have a ton of parts that they can use to replace or rebuild your lock. I know my lock set is original on my house, and I had it rekeyed, and they didn't even have to come out. I took a picture of it. I said, "Why is this doing this?" And they asked me if I wanted the same key for my front and back door, and I said, "We can do that." So yeah, so he showed me how to take out the key cylinder and pop it out. He rekeyed it, and I put it back in, and it's great not searching for the right key and having a lock that's secure and safe. But yeah, I would, and instead of messing with the lock itself, because it's old and it's like a car, unless you really know what you're doing, you could screw it up more than it would be worth repairing even. So yeah, talk to the experts up there, take pictures, and I guarantee they can help you out or steer you in the right direction. They'll tell you if it's broken and needs to be replaced and how to do that as well. A lot of times when you replace older locks and you keep the door, there is obviously this right here is if you can see it, it's an older lock set. So it's very large, and this plate also is large because it covers up a larger hole. So one thing to do if you're replacing your entire lock set or your entire piece of hardware, you're gonna have to keep in mind that if you want to keep the door, you're either gonna have to match the footprint of the plate, the faceplate of your lock, and fill in any gaps where the old lock set was removed. Generally, you can do that with a piece of stock, like 1x3 pine, and using some wood putty to fill in those gaps where the pine isn't, and you can glue it into place, and it'll be solid. But you also want to make sure that when you're doing that and filling that hole, that you, and especially if you're using adhesives or putty, that you clean it up enough that all of the adhesives and putty are not going to interfere with the operation of your new lock.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions with that. Will my locksmith do that for me? Put the wood in and fill the holes?
It depends on, I mean, I would ask that question if you want to have a locksmith do it, or if you were interested in having them replace something, then I would ask them how they handle that.
Okay, and then my other question is, how do you get all of the paint off of these items?
Well, that's a good question. So you could use what we have here is citrus strip. It's a great stripping gel. You put it on, you leave it on for a couple of minutes, and then you would use your putty knife and you could scrape that off. If you were going to try to paint that, or even if you're trying to remove it, that's a good way to get the screw heads clear of paint, so that they can be unscrewed. Another part, this is a 5-1 tool. It's great because of like that little edge right there can be used to clear your screw heads out. First, you have to find them. I don't even think there's no screws in there. But if there was a screw in there, yeah, the paint's holding this one in place. If there was a screw in there, you would take this and just gently line it up with the screw head, the slot on the screw head, and just you give it a little tap, and it'll clear that screw head. So then you can unscrew it with the screwdriver.
Cool. And then maybe a wire brush along with the citrus strip to get it off of the
and then
hardware on the front.
Yeah, and clean it off with mineral spirits. I noticed mineral spirits is the best way to clean up this type of stripping gel.
So in this scenario, we've not tried this yet, folks. Would you be able to take that door handle that you had and just shove it through that hole?
I don't know. Let's try it. No, because you know what? No, you can't, because the tumbler inside this one.
Oh, because the lock is not.
It's not. Yeah, it's not engaged, or it's engaged. So it's the way that is. Actually, you're. This is it. Allison probably just wants me to fix this. But no, the lock set must have moved on it, so it's not lined up.
Okay.
So if you do have a door like this that the knob came off of, be sure that when you look inside of that, there's a clear shot for the square knob post to go in. But this lock, the interior lock is up and the faceplate is down. So we'd have to take that apart.
Okay, well, that's another class.
Yeah. So one other thing about doors too that probably affects everybody or has at some time is when opening and closing them if they stick. There's a couple things you can do to make them not stick. A couple things you can check to make them function more properly and close without having to lift it up and close it like I've done many, many, many times in my house. So first thing what you want to do is you have your door hinges. So a lot of times where the hinge connects to the wall, because of years of opening and closing the door, the jamb might have become compromised. So one easy, common trick to use to prevent that from happening is you make sure your door is where you want it. So if your hinges are loose and you have to pick up your door a little bit to lock it or to get it to close and open properly, then what you can do is you can take a putty knife or something, and you can lift the door up, and then while it's open, so you can access your hinge screws, and basically use a putty knife to hold the door up in place and take the pressure off the hinges. And what you want to do too is you can shove this, just shove the handle of the putty knife underneath the door, and it'll hold it up level. And like I said, take the pressure off the hinges. Then you can lubricate the hinges. Also, check the screws on the jam side to make sure they're not stripped or loose. A lot of times, the old screws that they used are short because they just go in through the jam. So those screws could be replaced with longer screws that will go deeper into the wood and keep and tighten up the door. I mean, a lot of times just a longer screw is a simple fix for that problem. If your jam's tight and your door still is sticking or won't close, it happens because our houses shift. And taking it apart and rebuilding the jam is not a realistic option when you can fix it pretty easily using a small jack plane. So it's a great tool. We have a couple at the toolbox if anybody needs them. And when you have your doors functioning properly, doors that you walk in and out of every day, it's like your quality of life goes up. It's sort of like when you have windows that open freely too. You're not frustrated about something sticking and having to fight something to get it to open or close. So real simple way to do that with the jack plane is, say my door is sticking on the top. So you stand back, you look at your door when it's closed, you see that it's hitting the inside of the jam, probably 6 inches, the top 6 inches. So what you do, you want to wear your respirator, put on your glasses, take your jack plane, and basically the way this operates is there's a blade on the bottom. It's very sharp, so be careful. And you tighten and adjust it using the knob on the back.
Why are you tightening it?
You want to, if you back it off, it takes the blade all the way inside the tool, so it can't be used. If you use this and tighten it up forward, also it levels it out so that it's square, then the blade comes out and you can use it to plane. So real simple, and you don't even have to take the door off the hinges to do this. You close the door and you take a pencil and you just mark where it's hitting the jam, the inside of the jam, and then you just take the plane and you slightly shave the outside edge of where it's hitting. Take a little bit off, check it again. If it's a slight hit, then your door should close fine. If there's pain in there, again, wear your mask, but just keep working it until you have it closing smoothly.
Right, and just another, and I know you probably are tired of hearing about it, but if it is a friction surface, if there is paint on the door and on the jamb or the frame around the door, when it rubs together, it could be generating lead dust.
Yeah,
So you want to make sure that your doors open and close easily without any rubbing to prevent any sort of lead dust that may go into the air or onto the ground because it is a heavy mineral. So you want your doors just for a happy quality of life to open and close, but also for health and safety.
And a lot of people have built-in cabinets. Same thing works on those as well. And those are definitely, unfortunately, a lot of people have had those painted over the years. But that connection where you add, they're made so well and so tight that if you add tiny layers of paint over the years, then you're basically growing your door and growing your jam. So that will add up after a while, and it will it will start sticking. There's if it's a slight stick, when it gets humid, the wood will expand. So sometimes in the summer your doors don't open, as easily as they do in the winter. But you can also use a product like they sell beeswax that you can put on there. I've used old candles before and just rubbed it on there on the door to make it.
And that actually works surprisingly well.
It does.
The candle makes a world of difference for me in my hallway with the linen closet. It sticks.
And you can use that on your wooden drawers too as well. That's a great trick to make those slide properly as well.
So this is not really relevant, but it is relevant. So I have a door to get into my basement, and you have to push all of your might to get it to close. And there's a big gap under the door. It's like the cobbler's children have no shoes at my house. And so I was tired of having the gap because it's about to be winter. So I put a pool noodle, I sliced it down the middle, and I stuck it underneath where the gap was. And no lie, the door opens and closes like a champ. So not only did I solve my gap problem, it now opens and closes. I just push it and it closes and locks now instead of having to shoulder into it every time.
Luck is, what do they say? I'd rather be lucky than good.
Something, I don't know, but it was like I jumped for joy that day. But pool noodles help close gaps under doors in an emergency or just because you have a pool noodle lying around like I do. They are a big help with gaps, especially for exterior doors. You can cut them and put them over many things like pipes to keep them from freezing, but it came in really handy for this situation. Ian, do you have any questions?
We do. Going back to storm windows, Jeff asked, how can we better seal old aluminum storm windows where moisture is getting in between those and the interior pane?
So we want to make sure they have a tight fit.
Yeah, I would check the rubber gasket that's around it. I would check that. If you're talking about where the frame meets the inside of the window, the aluminum frame, as long as you're not near a moving part, you can use a peel and seal, something like that, or some caulk to seal that connection. Basically at the corner right here, imagine there's a storm window riding inside. You can use that and where the window meets the paint or the wood frame and seal that off. I mean, it's basically when you're dealing with moisture, a lot of times you're going to have condensation, especially if you have, if you have a boiler, if you have radiated heat. It's so dry and the window and outside is so moist in the winter that you will have condensation on your windows. There's really nothing that you can do about that. I mean, you just stay on top of it and wiping your windows down when you can is probably the best way to handle that.
I guess I would also check to make sure it's not bent at the bottom. I know we talked about fit, but it could just be bent just a little bit and maybe needs to be put back
Yeah,
in.
I mean, when you move those things, if you don't lubricate it properly and stuff, they are, aluminum and they're a thin frame. The way they're designed, they're sturdy, but you're pushing up and down on it, so you can't actually, if the seal's not good with the rubber gasket, I've seen it before where you can pull the aluminum down and create a gap between the window glass and the gasket as well. So make sure those are all tight and snug too. But don't caulk anything that's moving, obviously, or that you want to move. The worst thing you can really do is paint over your windows, not properly. I mean, there's a proper way to do it, and you can cut the paint as well. But yeah, anything that moves, I would keep caulk and paint away from.
Yeah, that's a
Great,
good question,
thank you.
Jeff.
Folks, any questions, please feel free to type them into the thought bubble. Allison and Matt, go ahead.
Okay, so we're nearing the end of our presentation. We are here at HQ, LakewoodAlive headquarters. So I'm sorry if the internet, I do see a little bit of a delay, so we apologize for that. But, we're here to answer any questions that you may have. And I hope you found this really informational. And I'm really sad now that we're ending this workshop because it means that Knowing Your Home 2020 is done. I know I was all excited at the beginning, but now I'm starting to get a little sad. So if we don't have any additional questions, we'll wait just a moment. Think about what workshops you want to see next season. If there's any hot topics that we haven't covered, we would love to look and dig deep into that so that we can have a great presentation for you. Or if there's an oldie but goodie that you want us to bring back, let us know. We're here to serve and spread as much information as we possibly can. So any final questions, Ian?
Thanks, Allison. We are good to go. No more questions. So thank you.
Okay, well, thanks again for sharing your evening with us tonight. Thanks again for all you've participated in the Knowing Your Home workshop series. As you know, this is probably our 12th virtual workshop, first time we've ever done them this way. And I think it's worked out pretty well. So thanks again for spending your time with us. Thanks for all of your support, and we'll see you in 2021. Take care. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Stay safe.